and they'll hopefully relate to the old diagram at least, there was the weapon controller. So in the new metaphor, this is the first in line. The weapon controller says, you know what, I'm going first. I'm going to make good decisions, right? So I won't get into how I've ordered this, or maybe we'll run into it as I build things. But I can control the order. So the weapon controller says, this is the simple weapon controller, and I can show you what's here. It says, well, this is all here just to say if I'm not an AI, if there's no AI, don't do anything. But it says, hey, do I have a target I could aim at? So if I don't have a target, right, because there's no way I could hit, I could even try to hit a shot, then report, not only can you not fire me, but you can't aim me. Otherwise, oh, there is a target I could aim at. I better report that. Fireable. The basic fireable is really simple. It just says, do I have energy for my shot? Okay, if I do, then, well, that's just for debugging. I could turn that off. Then am I in position where I could hit a shot? Then, all right, oh, I totally am. That's clearly I could hit a shot if I fired right now. So that's what this vector length 0 means. It means you don't need to travel any direction. You just need to shoot. And it reports you could fire. All right, that's step 1 in the chain. Step 2 in the chain, which is way down here, not ordered logically per se, but which is the melee ship AI. And this is going to look a little familiar, although it got a lot simpler. This just says, hey, whoops, didn't want to do that. This just says, hey, are there any weapons that I could aim? Okay, let's see. If I could aim them, maybe I should aim them. Right now, this has no logic for picking like one weapon versus another. This is just say, could I aim any of my weapons? Oh, look, I could aim one of my weapons. I'm going to pick that one. And then it says, not only that, but I think I could fire this. And by could fire, it means I could fire. That's not the weapon reporting it. This is the nav agent saying, you know what, I could fire this thing right now. Down here, it says, if I could fire, now this is sort of silly, but I have to re-look up that weapon again. Pretty much I'm just grabbing the weapon I stashed away. I could talk about the language technical reasons for this, but I just have to do it again so that I have live access to it. I won't get into it too much. This says, oh, hey, I think I could fire. Did I have a weapon? Grab it again. Is that weapon reporting that it's fireable? So I'm the nav agent and I think I could hit a shot because, or, I'm a nav agent and I want to aim a weapon because a weapon says it could be aimed. Now I need to check in with the weapon and say, hey, weapon, could you be fired? If that's true, then I say, cool, I want to fire you. So I set that property. And then I even have this new invention, which is the fire callback. And I'll get into a little bit of that later. But this is sometimes just setting a number isn't going to be enough. You're going to want to do something immediate. So these callbacks are going to be important for sequencing. And it says fire. The nav agent otherwise is kind of the same way it was on Friday. I've just changed this so that it really, rather than trying to dictate to the weapon what it wants it to do, it listens to the weapon and says, hey, what are you capable of? And could I even do that right now? And then, only then, does it tell it what to do. So that gives me a nice guarantee so that I can say, not only is the weapon reporting that in, but let's say I'm making a different type of weapon, like a Korah blade. If the Korah blade isn't going to tell the ship AI, you can fire me right now, it's going to say, no, there's a blade in play. You can't fire me at all. Don't even try. And so the nav agent not only will not try to fire it, but here's the interesting part. It also, the way I've written it, is going to say, not only can I not fire you, but I can't even aim you. This weapon isn't valid for you aiming. So it creates a very different Korah AI. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here, but it creates a Korah AI, and I'll show you, where it tries to shoot a shot, and it immediately, the moment a blade is in flight, it just starts going for pretty much intercept. Intercept course is the default for AI right now. We don't really have any other behaviors, but we haven't built them. But it just wants to intercept you. So it'll shoot a blade at you, and then if you start steering, it starts steering to match and try to chase you, instead of sitting there waiting for the blade, lining up a future shot, which, that could be a totally valid strategy too, but it gives us the granular control of that kind of thing. All right, so I know I haven't shown any running game. Bear with me, we'll get there. So this thing says, I set that property, right? What's it called? It is called want to fire. So the simple one, let's not talk about the Korah. The simple one, here's melee ship weapon controller. We talked about the basic one. Here's the continuous one. What does it have in here? Well, nothing. It just says you can't fire me if I'm not done reloading. That just has specific logic to handle our reload time. So it says, no, no, don't even tell, you can't fire me, I'm not done reloading. You could aim me because you're probably going to fire again soon, right? But last stop in the train of decision, which is, here we go, V3. There was a V2. We don't want to talk about it. So V2, all it does for the continuous, so this is the weapon button substitute. Remember in the diagram I said here's the button, and I can show you how the old one worked. So ship weapon buttons, just to show you how they work, pretty simple. So here's button. This says your button state is the state of your button. So for primary fire, that's the control key. If you're pushing it, report the state of the button. Ship AI rips that out and lies about the state of the button. And this is just going to say, hey, if somebody in the controller says you want to fire, then, or the weapon controller is what I'm calling it, then set the button state to 3. So it's kind of ripped out the player control, and so simply, it's just saying, hang on, set it to 3 if you want to fire. Easy, works great. I'll actually, let me bring up the Urquan. I can show you the Urquan right now. So here's the Dreadnought. There's no, it doesn't know how to launch fighters at me yet, but here it is. It's very, it doesn't even try to fly after me. It just says, well, if I can hit a shot, I'm gonna fire at you. And assuming I have, consistent momentum, there might be a bug because it sure seems off. Or I may have specified its projectile parameters wrong. Like it might have the wrong size. I'm not sure. I haven't really been working on the Urquan, but it says, okay, well, you can try to fire me, so go for it, fire. Easy, right? And actually pretty similar to our old one. Now the Korah gets a little more nuanced, but before we do that, I want to review how we used to do it. So this is some old stuff I'm about to delete. And we had not just this ship weapon controller, but there was a ship weapon object. And here's the continuous one. It didn't do much, but if we look at the substitute button for continuous, also didn't do much. Kind of looks the same as what it was here. But what it used to do is the ship weapon object would say, hey, melee navigation controller, did you pick me? If you picked me, I can fire. But it had all this complicated logic for like resetting itself, which the Korah needed to do. And here's the really gruesome part I wanted to show you, which is here's the weapon button logic for the press and hold, which is what the Korah use. Did you pick me? I mean, I don't even want to read this logic. Looking at this, it's so complicated. I need to check if the button should be released, and if so, set a different button state. And then there's all these rules, like if a blade hit, but if I'm in the middle of a reset cycle, ignore it. It had this whole like 1 frame delay thing that was pretty awful, but this logic is just, I mean, I can handle it, but I don't really love it. Let's look at the new one. That's the old one. Here's the new one. The new one is just called, you notice I don't even have a press and hold. I have something called stateful. Stateful looks, well, if you ignore all this disabled script, it just says, do whatever the weapon controller says I should do. It's abstracted, and you could, I could even change this so that they use the same thing and say, do whatever want to fire is, and I could have that thing manipulated. But it's easier to just have a separate property for now. Do whatever you tell me to. Okay, well, how is the press and hold even working? Well, let's look at the actual press and hold. So what's weird here is we've removed one component from the whole chain, which is this weapon object, and we've put all of the power in this, what I'm calling the weapon controller. So the weapon controller for a press and hold, which is itself a stateful thing. Stateful just adds use button state. All this does is say, I know how to manipulate the button state, which is really all I wanted, right? With the Korah, you just want to say, I know how to manipulate your button, so you're going to get useful stuff. And the way I accomplish this, I'll just show you the first part. Remember I said there's this callback that was pretty useful? So the fire instruction, melee ship AI weapon fire instruction. The default one, well, I could make the default one do something, but this one says if you said fire, if the navigation agent says fire, it's going to say set use button state to 3, which back down here in our stateful one would say, oh, button state's 3, I better make button state 3, which means just press the button, okay? Kind of like our continuous, 3. That's great for when you just launch a missile. But then the next frame, that's the end of the chain, right? We've already made all our decisions. We're coming to the very end, last stop, the nav agent, it's making its final decision, which is set button state to 3. Sorry, right here. Set button state to 3. And also null out the watch powers. That's how we track if there's a blade in flight or not. And then next frame, we come along, and here's our stateful, or sorry, not stateful, here's our press and hold again, and it says, okay, well, use button state 1 is just released. So if it was just released, set it back to 0. That didn't happen, so we're pretty sure about that. Now, if use button state's greater than or equal to 2, 2 is pressed, whereas 3 is just pressed. So if it's greater than or equal to 2, we say, you can't aim me, you can't fire me. Remember how I said gives us some of the granular control over how the AI is going to relate to the weapon? You can't aim me, you can't fire me. And if I was just activated, I didn't get into how that works, but if you just fired me this frame, then activated gets turned on. So that tells me the blade is in flight. This is what handles, well, I ran out of blades, or the blade bumped something. I say, I'm watching this collection. If the collection ever becomes empty, then I better release my button because the missile, or the blade in this case, I had in flight is gone. Then lastly, just for bookkeeping sake, if we make it through this, because unless the blade hits something on the first frame, this won't be true. If we make it through this, we say if I was just pressed, now for the next frame, report that I am pressed. So if you ignore kind of all the little detailed logic, the important part here is I'm still pretending to be a button, but I've added a little bit of nuance to how and why I might set those buttons. And it's all in one place. I can't reiterate that, like I can't restate that enough. This is going to be so much easier to maintain than something, the old one, which was, okay, here we go. I forget how bad this is until every time I look at it. All right, so not only is this not all in one place, this thing sets button state to 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so you could say, yeah, it's kind of all in one place. It defaults to 0, so there's no explicit 0 setting here. But the rules for why that should happen are partly in here, and then partly outside here, which is, well, if this was our 2 seconds, right? So if the 2 seconds are up, then you better tell that thing it wants to be released. And here's some rules that I have to manage. And so now I have to straddle the line and say, one, I hope you're executing in the right order, which, you know, we can guarantee to some level. But one, I hope you're executing in the right order. But two, here's my logic in one spot that kind of handles letting go of the button. And then here's my logic in the other spot that relates to another reason I might want to let go of the button. It's just a mess. It's so hard, you know, not only just making sure they execute in the right order, but being able to parse it and expand on it. So let's just say we have, you know, this is the basic press and hold. How would we make something that does press and hold, but releases after 2 seconds? Remember, this has been a while since we've talked about this. These extends say, I do everything my basic object does, but I also do additional specialized logic. So this thing, timed, extends ship weapon controller press and hold. It's going to execute after this thing's done. So this thing's going to run its logic and say, oh, here's what I think I should do about the button state. I'm done running. If someone else wants to do something, great. But I've extended that object. So here's timed. Timed says, well, I have a time I want to end at. And when the end at time is up, then I can manipulate the object however I want, because I know I'm the last object in the chain, unless I want to extend timed and do something else with it. This says after 2 seconds, I'm going to report, well, that's just for my tracking. I'm going to report this weapon has no longer been activated. Use button states 1, which means just released, and I'm done watching any powers. So let me switch to the core how to use this. What's great about this is it's all in one place. Here's a basic type of object. I could debug what this does. And here's a more specialized version, which this would run, and I can debug what this does. The order is clear. There is order. The order is clear, and I can kind of, what's the right way to say it? I can follow how I could make more things like this. I can not only follow what I built after not staring at it for a while, but I could also imagine coming back to do more things like a Melnorme charge shot or other sort of interesting button manipulation.